So in order to do that, we're going to use Kirchhoff's rules, the loop rule and the junction rule in order to set up equation and then solve for what the currents are. Before I do this, just want to remind you, if you like the video, give it a like. If you don't like it, just don't do anything. And if you really like the video and want to learn more physics, all kinds of different subjects, don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. So with that being said, let's get started on this problem. So this is what we've got. We've got 3 batteries. This is a 20-volt battery, 10 and a 30-volt battery. And we got these 3 resistors here, just kind of random numbers here, 2, 4, and 5 ohms. And what we want to do, we want to find the current in each of the 3 resistors. The first thing to keep in mind here is, although you've probably learned about what an equivalent resistance is, for this problem here, you can't really combine these in series or in parallel, right? You might say, oh, both of these are in parallel. However, you can't because there are also batteries here. So that actually will not work. So you got to be a little bit careful with this. Not all.
Imagine being able to build anything just by thinking about it. Meet base 44, a complete
circuits can be simplified using equivalent resistors like this. At least not in the traditional sense of using combinations of resistors in series and directly in parallel. So be careful, not in this problem. However, we can still solve it using Kirchhoff's rules. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by labeling all these points. And I'm just kind of arbitrarily going to call them A, B, C, D, E, and F. And I'm going to do this because when I'm going to start doing the loops, I just want to identify which loops I'm doing, just so we're very clear. Now, 2 of these points here are actually even more specific. I'm going to actually make these blue. I make point A blue, and I'm also going to make point D blue. And at these points, I could apply what is called a junction rule. So how would you apply Kirchhoff's junction rule to these points? Well, Kirchhoff's junction rule tells you that whatever current flows into the junction has to be the current that flows out of the junction. Well, as it stands right now, there is nothing labeled on this diagram, so you can't even really write a junction rule. So step number 1 is you have to pick a direction for the current. Now you might say, well, how do I do that? Actually, it doesn't matter which direction you pick for the junction rule. And I've solved tons of these problems, so I think I got a pretty good idea what's going to happen, especially here. Look, there's a 20-volt battery. And again, this side here is the positive side. That's the negative side. And this one is stronger than the 10-volt battery. So I'm probably going to guess that the current's going to flow through here, and I'm going to call this I1. Now over here, there's only one battery in this outer branch here. I'm going to guess that the current here is going to flow over here, and I'm going to call it something different. It's not going to be the same current. This is going to be current I3 in this outer branch, and the one down the middle, I don't know, I'm going to guess that it's going to go down. And it doesn't matter if I was wrong or if I'm completely right. At the end, the solution will tell us whether or not our guess was correct or incorrect. So this is what I've got. So I've got 3 different branches to the circuit. Therefore, I need 3 different currents. And that's what I'm going to try to solve for. What are I1, I2, and I3? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to write a junction rule. We're going to write a junction rule at junction A. So at junction A, the junction rule says whatever flows in, let's see what goes in. Well, I1's going this way, I2's going down here. And it's I3 that goes into the junction. I3. That has to be equal to whatever current flows out of the junction. So look what we have. We've got I1 that's flowing this way, and I've got I2 flowing down in the center branch the way I've got it labeled here. So that means I3 must be equal to the current flowing out, which is I1 plus I2. That is the junction rule. Now you can go ahead and say, well, what about this junction down over here? If I write the same expression, my junction rule for the junction down here at point D, what am I going to find? What's flowing into the junction? I have I1 flowing into the junction, and I also have I2 flowing into the junction, which is this term over here, the second term on the right-hand side of my first equation. And what else? What's flowing out of the junction here at point D? Well, it's the current I3. I3 is flowing down this lower section over here. And that is the current I3, which is the same everywhere in this kind of outer branch over here. So actually you get the same expression whether you choose this point or that point to write the junction rule. All right, the next thing we want to do now is we want to write the loop rule, Kirchhoff's loop rule. So the loop rule is pretty simple. You simply have to pick loops. In this case, there are 3 loops I can actually choose for this circuit, and we'll write it down for all 3. So I'm going to start with the loop that starts at point A, B, C, D, and then goes back to A. A, B, C, D, and then I'm going to go back to A. If I choose that loop and I sum all the voltages across the batteries and across the resistors, and I come back to the same point, the loop rule says you sum all of those potential differences across every single element, you come back to where you start. At the end, there should be no change in electrical potential. So let's start over here at point A, and I'm going to cross a battery. When you cross a battery, when I go from the negative to the positive, I get a voltage gain equal to the voltage of the battery. Now I'm going to cross a 2 ohm resistor, and I'm going to cross it in the direction of the current that I've picked. So that means if the current's flowing from the top to the bottom, that means this side here is at a higher potential than a low one. So that means there's a potential drop across that resistor, and that's given by Ohm's law. And that's simply the resistance times the current. The current is I1 flowing through there. All right, now I'm right over here at point C. I'm going to cross a battery now. I'm going to cross a battery from the high potential to the low potential, so I get a voltage drop. Whenever you get a voltage drop, you put a negative sign.
One day, you'll be able to meet surging content demands without compromising your business or your brand. For that, there's Adobe Express. Now your teams will be empowered to create their own on-brand content easily so they can meet business goals quickly. Your global teams across marketing, sales, and HR can reuse and remix approved on-brand content made by the creative team. They can change text, update images, localize content, and get things done faster. And hey, who doesn't like fast?
Arc'teryx hiking gear is designed to work better together for durable protection and comfort on the trail. Build your hiking kit at Arc'teryx.
Minus 10 volts. Now I'm at the same potential all the way till I get over here. All right, now look what happens over here in the center branch. I'm going from point D to point A. I am crossing a resistor. However, look what's going on here. If the current is flowing, the positive current is flowing from the top to the bottom here, and I'm doing my loop rule in a way that I'm going from point D to point A, that means that I'm going from a low potential to a higher potential. When you do that, you have to have a positive sign here, and the positive voltage gain that you're going to get here when I'm doing my loop rule is given by Ohm's law. It's the value of the resistance multiplied by the current flowing through it. That's it. I go back to point A. There we go. So let's call the junction rule equation 1. I'm going to call this equation 2. Now let's go ahead and maybe do another loop rule. Another loop rule I can do now is using the loop A, D, E, F, and then go back to A. So let's do that one. A, D, E, F, and then go back to A. What does that loop rule look like? Again, so here I'm actually going around counterclockwise around this loop. So when I start from A and I go down to D, look what happens now in this case. I'm crossing this 4 ohm resistor. However, I'm crossing it and I'm going in the same direction as the current. That means I'm going from a higher potential to a lower potential. That means I gotta get a voltage drop given by 4 times I2. That's Ohm's law written for this resistor. Then I go all the way to the battery. I'm going to cross a battery now from the low potential to the high potential, and there's a potential difference equal to 30 volts. I gain 30 volts when I cross that battery. And then at the end here, I'm going to cross this 5 ohm resistor. I cross a 5 ohm resistor going in the same direction as the current, which means there's a voltage drop given by Ohm's law, which is 5 times. It's the value of the resistance multiplied by the current flowing through it. Be careful here. This is I3 that's flowing through that resistor. I go back to point A, that has to be 0. This is equation 3. Now I could have done another loop. I could have done this big exterior loop here. What would we call that one? We call that one A, B, C, D, E, F, and back to A. We've gone through every single point here, going around this exterior loop. Well, the first 3 terms are going to look exactly like they do in equation 2. So here you have to have plus 20, you have to have minus 2 times I1, you have to have minus 10. All right, those are the first 3 terms. And then what do? And then I go over the 30 volt battery, that's plus 30. And then I go through this 5 ohm resistor, similar to what I did for equation 3. I have to have a voltage drop here equal to 5I3. Equal to 0, and that is equation 4. Now, there are only 3 unknowns in this problem. The 3 unknowns in this problem are I1, I2, and I3. If you did a little bit of algebra, you should know that if you have 3 unknowns, all you need are 3 equations in order to solve this. We have 4 equations. We actually have too much information. Actually, it turns out that equation 4, you would get equation 4 if you actually simply added equation 2 to equation 3. And you can check that out for yourself. This is simply equation 2 plus equation 3. So equation 4 basically doesn't give us any additional information because it's simply the sum of 2 other equations. You see, if I sum both of those equations, what's going to happen? In this equation here, you have 4i2. In this equation, you have minus 4i2. If I sum both of those up, those I2 terms are going to vanish, and then I'll be left with equation 4. So in order to solve this now, all we're going to do is we're going to use equation 1, equation 2, and equation 3. And at this point, the problem is all algebra. I've taken care of all the physics simply by writing down the junction rule, by labeling the currents in each branch, and by using the loop rule in order to obtain these algebraic expressions. So let's set them up now and solve for the unknowns and see what the currents are. Okay, in order to solve for this now here, I've rewritten my 3 equations, so my junction rule and then my 2 Kirchhoff's loop rules here. Let me work with equation 2 and 3 and kind of simplify those a little bit. Basically, what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to eliminate I2 and I3 from the top equation. And I can do that simply by eliminating I2 from equation 2. And that you can do simply by isolating the current I2 here. So how would that look like? You'd have 4I2. And now if I bring everything else on the other side, what are you going to end up with? You're going to end up with 2 times I1. What else? And here you're going to have 20 minus 10 gives me 10. If I bring that on the other side, it's going to be minus 10. Which means that at the end of the day, if I divide through by 4, I'm going to get that the current I2 is simply going to be I1 divided by 2. Minus, if I can simplify that, it's 10 over 4. It's 5 over 2, 2.5. All right, there's an expression now for the current I2 only in terms of I1. Now let's go ahead and simplify the current I3, do something similar over here. If I bring the 5I3 on the other side, I get 5I3 equals to 30 minus 4 times I2. Wrote 3, meant to say 4.
Thanks. This year, there are 4 exciting new iPhones to choose from, including a brand new addition joining the lineup. There's the new iPhone 17, the groundbreaking iPhone Air, a completely new member to the iPhone family, and finally, iPhone 17 Pro and iPhone 17 Pro Max. iPhone 17 comes in sage, mist blue, white, black, and lavender. iPhone Air comes in light gold, cloud white, space black, and sky blue. And iPhone 17 Pro and iPhone 17 Pro Max come in deep blue, silver, and cosmic orange. Let's take a look at the differences between them and what makes each one so great. iPhone 17 is now...
Okay, now we can do a little bit more algebra here in order to simplify this. This here is simply equal to 30 minus... Let's get rid of I2 altogether. I can get rid of I2 by substituting the expression I just got up here. This is I1 over 2 minus 5 over 2. All right, so we're almost done here. Just do a little bit more algebra here. This is 30. And this here, if I multiply through, what am I going to get? I'm going to get minus 2I1. Over here, I'm going to get, what's going to be left with? Plus 10. Okay, so at the end, my expression for I3, remember here I had 5I3. So really at the end, I got to divide through by 5. So what are we left with? We're going to get 30 plus 10 gives me 40. Minus 2I1. I can't forget to divide by 5. So this here simplifies nicely to 8 minus 2 over 5 I1. All right, so we have 2 important expressions here. We have I2 simply in terms of I1, and I have I3 here in terms of I1. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our junction rule, And we're going to substitute in the expressions for I2, then I3, and then we're only going to be left with an equation for I1, and I'll be able to solve that current. So let's go ahead and do that. So that means we're going to have I1 plus, instead of I2 here, let's substitute our expression. This is I1 over 2 minus 5 over 2. That there has to be equal to I3. I3 is 8 minus 2/5 multiplied by I1. All right, look at this expression over here. There's only I1 is the only unknown in this expression. So let's go back. Let's group all the I1 terms together. This is what it looks like. You have I1 plus I1 over 2. Then bring this term on the other side. What are you going to get? You're going to get plus 2/5 I1. That there must be equal to 8 plus, there's this term over here, 5 over 2, if I bring it to the other side. All right, at the end, we have to put everything on a common denominator. That kind of helps. I could choose 10 here as a common denominator for this side. And here it means I'm left with 10, plus 5, plus 4. All of this gets multiplied by I1. And here, if I put things on a common denominator, you're going to get 16 plus 5 divided by 2.
You did the same thing for me.
All right, so nearing the end over here, this side,
He said I clocked in at
what do we
3:30.
get? We're going to get 19 over 10 multiplied by I1. And this side here gives me 21 over 2. So we can factor out a 2 on each side. We're going to be left with 5.
He definitely is trying to fail us. He's like, nah.
So the final expression now for I1, you have to bring the 5 over on this side, and you have to divide through by 19. Gets a little bit long, you got to be careful here. So 5 times 21 gives me 105. And divided by 19. Here's the current for the branch I1, which I had labeled as this one over here. This was the current I1 here. 105 divided by 19. All right, I've solved now for I1. Let me just kind of make some room here. So you don't really need all this algebra here anymore. We know what the value of I1 is. Now what I want to do is I want to solve for what I2 and I3 are, given the value of I1.
I'll have 4 views.
Now you could just